Well, let's rip into it here with our favorite U.S. Report regular, former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor at Bondi Partners. Joining me from Washington, D.C., Mick Mulvaney. Welcome to the program. Mick, as I just mentioned, some big economic news with 3% GDP growth. Far better than expected, but I don't know. I kind of feel like reading the papers leading up to the election all year. I thought Trump was supposed to crash the economy. Are we supposed to be in the middle of some new Great Depression now?
Yeah, the tariffs were supposed to have a much more dramatic impact on the economy than they have. There's a lot of folks, myself included, James, who thought that the tariffs would create more inflation, and that certainly apparently hasn't been the case so far. Here's the pickle, though, that the Trump administration finds itself in, is that if the economy gets too hot, and 3% is a great number, don't get me wrong, it is a great number, but that's when the Federal Reserve starts to look at whether or not there'll be inflation pressures because of a hot economy. What do they do in those circumstances? They raise interest rates. So here's Donald Trump trying to get them to lower interest rates, and you got to wonder if they're not looking at this now, going at the Federal Reserve, going, maybe we need to raise rates the next time around. I don't think it's going to happen, but certainly anytime you see that 3.0% GDP growth number, you're going to start to worry about whether or not the Fed wants to raise rates as opposed to lower them.
Well, isn't that going to then create more pressure on Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chair, over his refusal to lower rates? It sounds like a rate cut that we may have priced in might not be on the cards.
Listen, they had their meeting this week, and Powell did his press conference, and they did not raise rates. Obviously, everybody knows that. But they tried to the press tried to pin him down on what might happen at the next meeting in September, and he was just as neutral as you can possibly be. In fact, there was some language that indicated he might be thinking about the possibility of raising at some point. The markets still tell you, the markets that will still indicate that the markets are expecting a quarter point rate cut in September. But I think Powell is sort of trying to is simply waiting and seeing. These numbers are confounding to a lot of people, including Jay Powell, who thought the tariffs would tank the economy, and clearly that's not happening yet.
Well, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating because it's almost like we're rewriting the post-war classical liberal economic script here. But what are the political implications for this? I mean, if this economy holds and holds into next year, does this put the Republicans in a good position going into those midterm elections, which we've already got to start thinking about?
Yeah, we just had a pollster on the show tonight on News Nation, where I do television here in the U.S., and he was talking about Donald Trump's approval ratings, which in his polling is much higher than you're reading or seeing in the liberal press here. You get the CNNs, the CBSs would tell you that Donald Trump's approval rating might be down around 40 or maybe even below. The pollster we had on tonight, who's not a Republican pollster, said he thinks the numbers are closer to 50%, and it's all because of the economy. And here's the risk the Democrats run. Some Democrats want to make the economy the central piece of their midterm elections. The problem with that is if the economy goes well, they're going to get shellacked. So right now, I think the Democrats are confounded by the economy. You hate to say that they want the economy to be bad, but if the economy were much worse, it would make it easier for them to develop a message for the midterms. But right now, the economy is good. Donald Trump's numbers are pretty good. And when you put those two things together, it sort of gives you the impression that maybe the Republicans' fate in the midterms might be better than people expect.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people were expecting that to be a bit of a problem for Trump going into those, but we'll see. Hey, I want to move on to another story, though, Mick, here. This is absolutely fascinating to a lot of people in Australia, this idea that members of Congress have been able for years to trade shares without any sort of insider trading laws that might apply to the rest of us here. There's been a big fight over that this week. Senator Josh Hawley, one of Trump's closest allies, pushing legislation around this. But Trump says that Hawley's been teaming up with Democrats on this. He slammed Hawley. At the same time, Nancy Pelosi, who has been one of Capitol Hill's, shall we say, most astute investors, wasn't particularly happy either. Have a look at this.
Nancy Pelosi became rich.
Why do you have to read that? We're here to talk about the 60th anniversary of Medicaid. That's what I agreed to come to talk about.
Yeah, but I wanted
what that means in the election.
I wanted to give you a chance just to respond. He accused you of insider trading. What's your response to that?
That's ridiculous.
Nancy Pelosi not particularly happy about taking those questions there about her really outstanding luck in the share market. Tell us about this law, Mick.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack right there, James. First of all, that's the reaction of a Democrat who's never had to answer a tough question before on CNN. She was
Yeah.
stunned that they would even ask her that. How could you ask me that question on this network? This is my network. This is the Clinton News Network. You're not supposed to ask me those questions on this. That's a Fox News type of question. But look, there's let's straighten out a couple of things about this because I follow this very closely. I have been in the House of Representatives, and I've also been in the White House. So I've seen this issue from a couple different perspectives. This is not an insider trading issue. Insider trading, which is trading in the stock market on private information, non-public information, is against the law. It's against the law for me as a private citizen. It was against the law for me as a congressman. It was against the law for me when I worked in the White House. It's not an insider trading issue. It's whether or not you should just not allow members of Congress to invest in individual stocks because they have so much impact over the equities markets, macroeconomy, everything. And it just looks bad. And this is what I tell all of my friends in Congress. Look, I used to be one of you guys, right? And we could own stocks. When I went down to the White House, they had rules that said we were not allowed to invest in individual stocks. I had to invest in broadly held mutual funds. Why there's different rules for members of the House and members of the White House, I have no idea. But I think the House and the Senate would be a lot better off by simply banning this because it looks so terrible to the public, and the institution is already struggling with its credibility.
It's funny, there's a X account, a Twitter account that tracks Nancy Pelosi's share trades, and that portfolio has done very, very well over the years. Hey, I want to talk about some Middle Eastern news here, too. The White House has also confirmed that Steve Witkoff is headed to Gaza on Saturday to inspect distribution sites for aid in Gaza. But this comes amidst all of these other countries calling for a recognition of Palestine. Canada is the latest one of the latest ones.
There's a lot of politicians here and a lot of folks in the Trump administration are like, wait a second, so you want to reward the Palestinians for the October 7th attacks. That's what this is all about, right? This is what the Palestinians wanted. They wanted this war. It's why they started the attacks on October 7th. And now here, many Western countries contemplating giving them exactly what they wanted before they started this war. So I don't think it's going to help. It's going to fall on deaf ears, I think, in this country. Again, it may not be the kiss of death. It wasn't with the British, but it's not going to make making a deal any easier. I would watch the Canadian situation very closely if I was the Australian government.
Yeah, I think that's right. Hey, Mick, before I let you go, I got to talk about this. A little bit of lighter news here. We might not be unburdened by what has been, but Kamala Harris has confirmed she's not going to be running for California governor. Now, people are suggesting that maybe, Mick, I can't imagine she would, but could she be possibly tossing up a presidential run?
You know, James, she just talked about her book today as well. I think it comes out, but she did her announcement. So yesterday there was news about her. Today there's news about her. You could tell that there's sort of a coordinated effort to get in the news. But here's what I tell people in this country and in your country. I know a lot of Republicans who are really gung-ho about J.D. Vance in 2020. I know a lot of Republicans who are gung-ho about Marco Rubio and other folks who are excited about Ted Cruz. Go down the list. I know a lot of Democrats. I don't know a single Democrat who is clamoring for Kamala Harris to run for anything. And unless you can build some enthusiasm for your campaign, you're dead in the water. Remember, she ran in 2016 for president. People forget this, and had to drop out of the race before the Iowa caucuses, our very first primaries, because she did so poorly. She's a horrible candidate. She's lost a presidential run now twice. So I don't see her doing it unless she's truly unburdened by what has not been.
Well, I'll tell you, Mick, we would absolutely love her to run again here on the U.S. Report because it was so entertaining the last time around. Mick Mulvaney, we're going to have to leave it there. See you next time.